My wife confessed, I cheated because I needed a stronger man. Then her family blamed me. I laughed, grabbed my keys, and left forever, while her world collapsed. I sat there, watching her, my wife. No, the woman I thought was my wife. She stood across from me, arms crossed, staring at the floor like a child caught doing something bad. Except she didn't look guilty, she looked indifferent. Then she said it, I cheated because I needed a stronger man. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of the sheer absurdity of it. Stronger, how? Physically, emotionally, financially, none of it made sense. But what hit me the hardest wasn't the confession itself. It was the way she said it, like it was some logical conclusion. Like it was something I should have expected all along. I let the words sit in the air between us. I wanted to see if she'd take them back, if she'd show even the slightest bit of regret. But she didn't. She just stood there, waiting for me to react, like my pain was some kind of experiment she was conducting. And then her family spoke. Well, can you blame her? I turned my head slowly, almost in disbelief. It was her mother who had said it, arms folded, just like her daughter, the same expression on her face. Like they had rehearsed this moment, like they had been waiting for it. You've always been passive, her father chimed in. She needed more from you, a real man would have seen the signs. Her sister, sitting on the couch with her legs crossed, just shrugged. Honestly, we all saw it coming. I could feel it then. The walls weren't closing in, but something shifted inside me. It wasn't heartbreak, it was clarity, a kind of realization that felt so sharp it could cut through steel. They weren't defending her, they were blaming me. I glanced back at my wife. She still hadn't said a word, letting them speak for her, like they always did. I had spent years with this woman, given her everything I had, worked tirelessly to provide a life we could build together. And this was the thanks I got, not just betrayal, but complete disrespect, as if I had brought it on myself. I exhaled slowly, there was no point in arguing, I knew that now. They had already made up their minds about me. The truth was, it had never really been my marriage. It had always been theirs, a family affair where I was just the extra piece, the provider, the outsider who was tolerated until I wasn't useful anymore. I looked at her one last time, searching for something, anything, that would make me feel like I was losing something important. But I felt nothing, that's when I smiled. And that's when I laughed. The laughter left my lips before I even thought about it. It wasn't forced, it wasn't a reaction I planned. It just came out, pure, raw amusement at the insanity of the situation. That's when the room exploded. Are you seriously laughing right now? Her sister snapped, her voice dripping with disbelief. Her mother leaned forward, her expression twisting into something close to disgust. This is exactly what we're talking about. You don't take things seriously. No wonder she needed someone else. I shook my head, looking at them all, letting my eyes settle on each one of their faces. They weren't just against me. They were convinced I was the villain in all of this. You're pathetic, her father muttered, shaking his head like he was embarrassed for me. Your wife is telling you, she had to go elsewhere for what she needed, and this is how you react. Her sister scoffed. Honestly, just leave already. You clearly don't deserve her. I almost wanted to ask what exactly I had done to deserve this, but I didn't. There was no point. In their eyes, I had already lost, and they weren't going to let me forget it. My wife, she was still silent, still standing there, letting them fight her battle for her, like she always did. It was almost funny how predictable it was. I sighed, rubbing my temple. So let me get this straight. She cheats on me, lies to me, betrays everything we built, and I'm the problem. Her mother's eyes narrowed. You pushed her to this. Her father nodded. A man who lets his wife feel neglected is no man at all. Neglected, that word almost made me laugh again. I had worked late nights to give us a comfortable life. I had been there for her when she cried over stupid fights with her sister. When she stressed about things that didn't even matter. I had held her when she felt insecure, reassured her when she doubted herself. I had been loyal, I had been present, and somehow, none of that counted. I glanced at my wife, waiting to see if she would at least step in, take some responsibility. But she just stood there, biting her lip, her arms still crossed. Nothing. That was the final confirmation I needed. I had spent so much time trying to be the man she needed, but she had never actually wanted me, not really. I had been convenient, and now I was disposable. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my keys, and twirled them between my fingers. Their voices grew louder, overlapping each other, all of them trying to get the last word in, trying to make sure I walked out of there believing I was the failure. But I wasn't listening anymore. I had already made my decision. I twirled my keys in my fingers, letting the metal clink together, a small sound in the middle of all their noise. They were still talking, still arguing, still trying to drill into my head that I was the reason for all of this. I stopped listening. I took one last look at my wife. She had barely moved, still standing there, arms crossed, face blank. She was waiting for something, for me to explode, for me to beg, for me to ask why. But I wasn't going to give her that. She didn't deserve it. I smirked, shaking my head. You know what? I'm done. The words hit the room like a bomb. Silence, for the first time since this disaster of a conversation started. No one spoke, they just stared at me. Then her mother scoffed. Oh please. You're just being dramatic. Am I? I raised an eyebrow, slipping my keys into my palm. You all wanted me to take responsibility. Fine. I'll take responsibility for the one thing that actually matters. I turned toward the door. Leave it. My wife finally reacted. She stepped forward, her expression twisting into something between shock and anger. Wait, what? I didn't stop. Are you seriously walking out right now? Her father snapped. That's the kind of man you are, running away. I let out a breath of laughter as I reached for the door handle. You've been telling me all night that I'm not a man, right? So why would you care what I do now? I pulled the door open, that's when the real panic started. Wait, my wife's voice was sharper this time, desperate almost. You're just going to leave, just like that? I glanced over my shoulder. Yeah. Just like that. You can't, her sister cut in, almost laughing, like she thought this was some kind of bluff. You're seriously going to leave everything over one mistake? I raised an eyebrow. One mistake? My wife's jaw tightened. I told you why it happened. Yeah, you needed a stronger man. I heard you the first time. I gave her a look. Let him handle it then. Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, I saw it fear. I didn't wait for another word. I stepped through the doorway, out into the night, and slammed the door shut behind me. And just like that, I was free, or so I thought. My phone started vibrating before I even made it to my car. The first call, then another, and another. By the time I sat in the driver's seat, my screen was lighting up like a damn Christmas tree, 50 missed calls. I stared at the screen, then chuckled to myself. Now they cared. The moment I started the engine, my phone kept lighting up, vibrating non-stop on the passenger seat. Call after call, her name, her mother's name, her sister, even her father. They were all taking turns, trying to break through the silence I had just given them. I didn't answer. I pulled out of the driveway without hesitation, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally realize you don't owe anyone a damn thing. But they weren't ready to accept that. As I turned onto the main road, a message popped up. Then another, then a flood of them. Are you seriously ignoring me? You can't just, you can click on share and more to see if there is a part 2.